I stood in my mahogany-paneled office at Morrison & Associates, flipping through the latest case files. At 42, I had earned a reputation as Boston's toughest criminal defense attorney. My success rate, 97%, spoke louder than any billboard or business card ever could. The grandfather clock in the corner let out a low, deliberate chime, its echo filling the empty office. Another late night. Lisa would understand. She always did. Or at least, that's what I told myself. The soft buzz of my phone pulled me from the files. A text from Lisa. Don't forget the charity gala tomorrow night. James Bradford confirmed he's attending. My jaw clenched at the sight of his name. Bradford, the pharmaceutical executive, had weaved his way back into our lives 3 months ago, courtesy of mutual friends. There was something about the guy, something I couldn't put my finger on, that didn't sit right. 20 years as a defense attorney had taught me to trust those gut feelings. They were rarely wrong. I shoved the case files into my briefcase and locked up, making my way home to our house in Beacon Hill. That colonial was more than just a house to me. It was proof. Proof that a kid from a broken home who scraped by on scholarships could climb his way up to something better. I'd earned every inch of that place, one late night at a time. As I pulled into the driveway, the lights were still on. Through the kitchen window, I caught sight of Lisa moving around, her phone pressed to her ear. She was laughing, the kind of laugh I knew well. It was the one she used when she wanted to impress someone. I stepped out of the car, and by the time I got to the front door, her voice had dropped to a whisper. I have to go. He's home. When I walked into the kitchen, she tucked her phone into her pocket like it had never been there. She wore a new dress, sleek, black, and expensive-looking. Designer, I guessed. Her blonde hair was styled perfectly, and even this late at night, her makeup looked like she'd just stepped out of a salon. Another charity meeting? I asked, keeping my tone light as I set my briefcase down on the counter. The Children's Hospital benefit needs some extra attention this year, Lisa said, avoiding my gaze as she rearranged an already spotless counter. James has some great ideas for fundraising. I poured myself a scotch, watching her reflection in the kitchen window. Her hand faltered, just for a second. James seems to have a lot of ideas lately, I said, swirling the amber liquid in the glass. She didn't look up. He's been incredibly generous with his time. The hospital board's lucky to have him. I took a slow sip. And how many hospital board meetings require new Cartier bracelets? Lisa's hand drifted instinctively to her wrist, where a diamond bracelet caught the light. I bought this myself. I told you about it last week. I met her eyes. No, Lisa, you didn't. The room filled with an uncomfortable silence. She broke it first, letting out a laugh that felt a little too forced. You've been so busy with work, you probably just forgot, she said, brushing her hair behind her ear. I'm heading to bed. Don't stay up too late with those files. I watched her leave, catching the faintest tremor in her step. Once her footsteps faded upstairs, I quietly made my way through the house. Outside Emily's room, light seeped through the crack under the door. I was about to knock when I heard Mark's voice from inside. If they split up, who would you pick? My hand froze inches from the door. Emily's response cut through the air, sharp and sure. James, duh. He's taking us to Paris for spring break, and he promised me that Porsche for my birthday. Plus, Mom says he's probably our real dad anyway. They were together in college, and it makes sense. Why else would we both have blue eyes? I nearly dropped the glass in my hand. Years in a courtroom had taught me how to stay calm under pressure, but nothing prepared me for that. Did Mom actually say that? Mark's voice was smaller now, unsure. Yeah, Emily replied casually. Last week when we had lunch with him at the Four Seasons. She said they were serious in college, but something happened, and they broke up. Then she met Dad right after. But she and James always kept in touch. And does Dad know? Mark asked. Emily laughed. Soft. But with that same edge Lisa sometimes had. Of course not. Mom says he wouldn't understand. James thinks it's better to wait until everything's in place before telling him. I stood there, gripping the glass, listening as 2 decades of certainty unraveled in the span of 5 minutes. I stepped back from the door, my hand trembling slightly as I processed what I just overheard. Decades of courtroom experience were the only thing keeping me upright. My mind raced, sifting through years of memories, re-examining them through this new, unforgiving lens. Lisa's unexpected pregnancy not long after we started dating at Stanford. Her insistence on keeping certain social connections intact. The deliberate way she had woven James Bradford back into our lives. The signs had been there all along. I just hadn't wanted to see them. I walked to my home office, powered up my laptop, and began scrolling through old photos. It felt almost absurd, like something out of a bad thriller. But as the images flashed by, the truth sharpened. Emily's blue eyes. Mark's sharp features. Both kids were tall, lean. James Bradford's build. I ran a hand down my face. My brown eyes. My broader frame. None of it matched. This was more than an affair. Lisa had engineered an elaborate deception, allowing me to raise another man's children while keeping that man close by, hidden in plain sight. Every bedtime story, every scraped knee, every graduation photo, it had all been built on a lie. I opened a new tab, typing James Bradford into the search bar. His company, Bradford Pharmaceuticals, had grown at a staggering rate over the last decade. They specialized in cancer treatments and rare disease medications, high-profit areas with little regulatory oversight. I knew that kind of growth. It was the kind that didn't happen without cutting corners. As I scrolled, a notification popped up on my phone. A message from Lisa. Don't forget to sign the private school tuition checks for next semester. Love you. I stared at the screen, feeling the shift. She was tying up loose ends, pushing more and more financial obligations onto me, keeping me distracted while steadily alienating the kids. No, her kids. This wasn't coincidence. It was preparation. I opened our bank records, scanning for patterns I hadn't noticed before. There they were. Lisa's charity expenses had ballooned over the past year. Dinners at high-end restaurants. Hotel stays she had claimed were for board meetings. I laughed bitterly. The grandfather clock chimed midnight. I didn't look up. Instead, I scrolled through my contacts, stopping at the name I needed, Detective Catherine Walsh. She picked up on the second ring, her voice sharp despite the late hour. Thomas? What's going on? I need everything you can dig up on James Bradford, I said quietly. Focus on his time at Stanford and any cold cases from that period. A pause. Then, this isn't like you. What's happening? I hesitated, but there was no point in lying. I think Lisa and James are planning something. I need to know exactly who I'm dealing with before they make their move. Her tone hardened. Give me 48 hours. And Thomas, be careful. Men like Bradford? They don't play fair. They cover their tracks. I know, I said, ending the call. I sat there for a moment, staring at the screen, letting the weight of the situation settle over me. I had spent years defending clients, tearing apart prosecutors, dismantling evidence piece by piece. Now those same skills would be turned toward protecting myself. Lisa and James had spent years weaving this lie, carefully calculating their moves. But they had made one mistake. They underestimated me. In court, I was known for salvaging impossible cases, for turning hopeless situations into victories. I hadn't earned the nickname the Butcher by accident. People assumed it was because of my ability to destroy witnesses on the stand. They were wrong. It was because I could take apart entire lives, brick by brick, without ever stepping outside the law. I walked to the safe in the corner of the room, unlocking it with steady hands. Inside sat a small, unmarked phone, a burner, kept for certain clients. I powered it on, scrolling through old numbers. These weren't people who operated within the lines, but they got results. Lisa and James thought this would be a clean break. They were about to find out just how messy things could get. Before shutting the safe, I pulled out another file, one I hadn't opened in years. Charlotte Hayes, Stanford student, died during our senior year. Officially ruled an accidental drowning, but there had been whispers, suggestions that something didn't add up. James Bradford's name had come up during the investigation. Nothing had stuck. I scanned the file, then forwarded it to Catherine. Let's see what you've been hiding, James, I muttered under my breath. I left the house around midnight, the weight of my concealed carry pressing against my side. The streets of Boston stretched out in front of me, empty and silent. As I drove, plans began to crystallize. Lisa and James wanted to burn down the life I had built. Fine. Let them try. But first, I would do what I did best: gather evidence, expose weaknesses, and build an airtight case. And when the time came, I would remind them exactly why you don't cross a man who's spent his entire life mastering the art of destruction. Let the games begin. The call came at 6 a.m., jolting me out of the fog of late-night planning. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered without hesitation. "Dad, where are you?" Mark's voice cracked, panic bleeding through every word. "You need to come home. Now." I found something on James's phone. He left it charging in the kitchen last night. I had spent the night in my downtown office, making calls and quietly aligning the pieces of this twisted puzzle. I rubbed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. "I'll meet you in the garden in 20 minutes, I said firmly. "Don't tell anyone we spoke." By the time I pulled into the driveway, the house was quiet. Mark was pacing beneath the old oak tree in the backyard, his face pale and tight with fear. The second he saw me, I could tell something was seriously wrong. I led him over to the stone bench, hidden behind the hedges where the house couldn't overlook us. "Show me," I said, keeping my tone calm, though the tension was clawing at me. Mark's hands trembled as he handed over his phone. "James stayed over last night after you left," said he, "and Mom needed to talk about the charity. He left his phone charging while they were in the study, and I just knew something wasn't right." I began scrolling through the screenshots Mark had taken. With every swipe, the pit in my stomach grew deeper. The messages between James and Lisa weren't just suspicious. They were calculated, deliberate. Offshore accounts, plans to tarnish my reputation, and worse, discussions about how to make me disappear. "He's planning to have you killed, Dad," Mark whispered, his voice shaking. "Mom knows. She said it would be cleaner than a divorce." I kept my composure, years of courtroom control kicking in, but inside, the walls were caving in. Then I saw it, the message that stopped me cold. "James, everything's arranged for Boston Harbor. Our friend will make it look like an accident during the Chen case depositions. Lisa, you're sure it can't be traced back? James, that's why we're paying premium." The same team handled the Hayes situation 20 years ago. No loose ends. My jaw tightened, the mention of Charlotte Hayes finally confirming what I had long suspected. I turned to Mark, carefully studying his face. Despite the blue eyes that weren't mine, I saw something familiar: determination, resilience. "Why did you show me this?" I asked, my voice quieter now. Mark wiped his eyes with his sleeve, his chin lifting defiantly. "Because you're the one who taught me to ride a bike. You stayed up all night when I was sick. You came to every concert, even when you had court the next day. DNA doesn't make someone a father, Dad. You do." I placed my hand on his shoulder, feeling the slight tremor running through him. "Mark, what they're planning is murder. Do you understand what showing me this means?" He nodded. "I chose justice over blood," he said firmly. "I chose the father who earned the title, not the one who just gave me blue eyes." I exhaled slowly, the weight of his words hitting hard. "This stays between us," I said, keeping my tone even. "Act normal. Don't let them suspect anything. Can you do that?" Mark nodded, his eyes still wet but steady. "I've been pretending since I found the messages. Emily, she doesn't see it. She's totally under their spell. Paris, cars, promises of fancy schools. She believes everything they say." I tightened my grip on his shoulder. "Go back inside. Get ready for school. Act normal. Can you do that?" "Yeah," Mark said softly. "I can do that." I watched as he disappeared into the house, shoulders squared, doing his best to mask the fear I knew he was feeling. Once he was gone, I pulled out the burner phone from my pocket. The first call went straight to Detective Catherine Walsh. "I need everything you have on Bradford," I said without hesitation. "Now." "He's planning something at Boston Harbor during the Chen depositions." Catherine's voice was sharp. "It's worse than we thought, Thomas. My team found connections between Bradford Pharmaceuticals and a shell company called Oceanic Solutions. They claim to provide maritime security services, but their real business is making people disappear at sea. 3 executives who opposed Bradford's mergers have had accidents on their boats in the past 5 years." "And Charlotte Hayes?" I asked, the knot in my chest tightening. "We're reopening it. Her sister, Diana, never let it go. She's a cybersecurity expert now, been investigating privately for years. She found evidence that James arranged Charlotte's death when she threatened to expose illegal drug trials at Stanford. I ran a hand through my hair, the pieces falling together faster than I could process them. I need to meet Diana, I said. Today. She's already on her way to Boston, Catherine replied. But Thomas, there's more. Bradford Pharmaceuticals is built on fraud. They've been falsifying trial data, hiding dangerous side effects, bribing FDA officials. The Paris trip? It's cover. He's fleeing jurisdiction when the investigation goes public, and he's taking Lisa and the kids with him. I clenched the phone tighter. He's using them as shields. Yes, Catherine said grimly. But Thomas, be careful. Men like Bradford don't just kill their enemies. They destroy everything their enemies care about first. I ended the call, the weight of it all sinking in. James Bradford was orchestrating his escape, and Lisa, either willingly or blindly, was helping him erase me from the picture. A text from Lisa popped up on my phone. Where are you? We need to finalize the kids' spring break plans. I typed back quickly. Tied up with the Chung case. Dinner with the partners tonight. Don't wait up. The lie slipped out with ease. Let them think I was distracted. Let them believe I was oblivious. Every good trap needed the right bait. I made another call, this time to Adrian Reynolds, my old mentor and now a federal judge. He answered on the first ring. Thomas, I was hoping you'd call. Adrian's voice came through the line, calm but cautious. I need warrants, Adrian. The kind that won't appear in any official record until after they're executed. There was a brief silence. You're talking about black warrants. That's dangerous territory. Bradford Pharmaceuticals is killing people. I have evidence of FDA fraud, illegal trials, and multiple murders. But I need the warrants held back until exactly the right moment. Adrian's hesitation hung in the air. This is personal, isn't it? He's trying to kill me and take my children out of the country. So yes, it's personal. A heavy sigh followed. What you're planning could end your career, Thomas. If I don't stop him, my career will be the least of my concerns. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. I'll have the warrants prepared. But Thomas, remember what you told me when you defended Catherine Walsh. Sometimes justice requires sacrifice. I haven't forgotten, I replied coldly. Bradford and Lisa are about to learn exactly how much I'm willing to sacrifice to protect what's mine. I ended the call and opened my calendar. The Chung case depositions were scheduled for next week at my Harborside office. Bradford's team would expect me to be buried in that high-profile case, making it the perfect time for an accident. They thought they were arranging my death. Instead, they were walking into a trap 20 years in the making. Bradford had gotten away with murder once before. This time, I would make sure justice was served, not just for Charlotte Hayes, but for everyone whose life he had destroyed. Let them plan. I had built my career dismantling perfect crimes. This time, it was personal. Diana Hayes stepped into my office right at noon. Even after 20 years, the resemblance to her sister Charlotte was striking. She carried herself with a certain rigidness, like someone who had been chasing justice for far too long. Her dark eyes swept over me, evaluating every detail. Catherine Walsh says you have evidence linking James Bradford to my sister's murder, she said, skipping pleasantries. She placed an encrypted laptop on my desk. I slid a file toward her. These are records from Stanford's archived security logs. Bradford's ID card accessed the pool facility 10 minutes before Charlotte was found. Diana's grip tightened on the laptop. The police said the security system was down that night. It was, for the main entrance. But the maintenance door had a separate logger. Bradford didn't know about it. I leaned forward. Tell me what really happened that night. Diana opened her laptop, moving through decades-old files with precision. Charlotte was a biochemistry major, brilliant at analyzing trial data. She interned at Bradford's first pharmaceutical startup. It was small back then, just a research company. She found discrepancies in their trial results for a cancer drug. What kind of discrepancies? Patients dying from unrelated complications. Data altered to hide severe side effects. Diana's voice hardened. Charlotte confronted James about it. A week later, my sister, a champion swimmer, supposedly drowned during a late-night swim. I studied the complex web of financial transactions on Diana's screen. You've been tracking him ever since? Every move. Shell companies, suspicious deaths tied to his corporations. Bradford Pharmaceuticals isn't just a company. It's a criminal enterprise. They test experimental drugs on unknowing patients, falsify results, and eliminate anyone who threatens to expose them. Like they're planning to eliminate me, I said quietly. Diana's head snapped up. What do you mean? I handed her my phone and let her scroll through the screenshots Mark had taken. As she read, her face darkened. This is the same signature, she muttered. Make it look like an accident. Offshore accounts to pay the killers. It's exactly how Charlotte died. I need everything you have on Bradford's operation, I said. Every piece of evidence you've gathered over the past 20 years. In return, I'm giving you what you've always wanted. A chance to bring him down permanently. Diana's eyes locked onto mine, calculating. Catherine said you were one of the good ones. That's why I came. But this isn't just about justice for Charlotte anymore, is it? No, I admitted. He's trying to steal my family, kill me, and escape justice. I won't let that happen. She leaned back slightly. What's your plan? I outlined my strategy, watching as her skepticism gave way to quiet interest. Bradford's weakness is his arrogance, I explained. He believes he's untouchable because he's never faced an opponent willing to match his ruthlessness. Within the law. And you can? I've spent 2 decades defending people from federal prosecution. I know the loopholes. More importantly, I know how to build a case that's impossible to escape. Diana nodded slowly. I have bank records showing payments to FDA officials, emails about falsified trial data, and surveillance footage of Bradford meeting with known hitmen. She hesitated. But the most damaging evidence involves your children. I kept my expression neutral. What about them? Bradford didn't just have an affair with Lisa. He orchestrated the entire relationship. Emails show he pushed her to pursue you specifically because of your potential as a lawyer. He wanted someone successful raising his children, someone who could be discredited if they found out the truth. The revelation hit like a sledgehammer, but I didn't let it show. Years in the courtroom had taught me to suppress even the sharpest pain. Every moment of my marriage had been a manipulation, but the anger that filled me wasn't hot. It was cold, crystal clear. When can you have the evidence ready? Give me 48 hours to compile everything, Diana said. But Thomas, Bradford's killed everyone who's threatened him. Why do you think you'll succeed where others have failed? I smiled, but there was nothing warm about it. Because unlike his other enemies, I understand how predators think. I've spent my career defending them. I know their patterns, their weaknesses. I glanced at my calendar. Bradford's team will move during the chin depositions. That gives us 1 week to prepare. Diana's fingers moved across her keyboard again. I sat in the dim glow of my office, the weight of years of deception settling into every corner of the room. Diana's words echoed in my mind as I scanned the monitors displaying the sprawling empire James Bradford had built. Not just in pharmaceuticals, but in fraud, manipulation, and murder. They've been planning this for years, Diana said, her voice low but firm. She tapped the screen, highlighting a series of messages between James and Lisa from 15 years ago. I read them silently, my expression hardening with each line. It wasn't just an affair. It had never been just an affair. Bradford had kept Lisa close, weaving her into his plans with the precision of a man who never left anything to chance. They've been positioning you as the perfect fall guy, Diana continued. A high-profile attorney with offshore accounts, access to criminal clients, and just enough questionable connections to make it look convincing. I set my coffee cup down carefully, my knuckles whitening as I processed the full weight of what she was saying. How many women has he done this to? I asked, keeping my tone steady. Diana's fingers danced across the keyboard, pulling up encrypted files and photos. 7 that we know of. 3 ended up dead when they threatened to expose him. 2 vanished completely. Offshore records suggest payoffs. The other 2, her voice trailed off, and she met my gaze. Lisa, I said flatly, and my sister's best friend from college, Diana confirmed. The one who conveniently couldn't remember anything about the night Charlotte died. Catherine Walsh entered the office, a stack of files in her hands marked with federal case numbers. She set them down on the table, her eyes flicking between the monitors. Bradford's operation runs deeper than we thought, Catherine said grimly. His pharmaceutical company isn't just laundering money. They're conducting illegal drug trials in Eastern Europe, testing dangerous treatments on terminal patients who have nothing left to lose. When those trials go wrong, they falsify the death certificates. Natural causes, on paper. I straightened in my chair. How many? Catherine glanced at Diana, who answered without hesitation. At least 37 confirmed in the past 5 years, she said. Probably hundreds more we haven't been able to trace. Catherine spread photos across the desk, patients before and after Bradford's so-called miracle treatments. I scanned their faces, seeing the hope in their eyes before the inevitable decline that followed. This isn't just about revenge anymore, I said quietly. It's about stopping him before anyone else gets hurt. We need more than photos and documents, Catherine added. Bradford's lawyers will claim these are forgeries. He's too well protected. That's where I come in, Diana said, typing furiously. I've infiltrated his secure servers. Emails, transactions, deleted files. I can prove the chain of custody. I watched as data filled the screen, each piece more damning than the last. There's something else, Diana said, pausing for a moment before pulling up a folder labeled Bradford, personal. You need to see this. She opened a series of messages from years ago. Intimate conversations between James and Lisa. The words blurred as I read them, but the meaning was crystal clear. He had never lost touch with her. Even when Lisa and I were first married, Bradford was still in the background, pulling strings, guiding her hand. My entire marriage had been a carefully orchestrated move in Bradford's larger game. I closed the laptop slowly, the weight of betrayal pressing down like lead. Catherine spoke first. Thomas, you don't have to handle this alone. I looked at her and Diana. Their expressions hardened with the same resolve I felt burning inside me. No, I said, my voice cold. I'm not alone. But make no mistake, this isn't just about stopping Bradford. This is about dismantling everything he's built. Diana nodded. I'll start compiling the data. But Thomas, this is dangerous. He's not going to sit back once he realizes someone's onto him. I know, I said calmly, but that's his mistake. My phone buzzed with a message from Lisa. Emily's college counselor wants to meet tomorrow. James offered to attend since you're busy with the Chung case. I showed the message to Diana. Her jaw tightened. They're accelerating their timeline, she said. Bradford's laying the groundwork to establish his parental involvement. If something happens to you, he'll take over seamlessly. I typed a response. Fine. I have depositions to prepare. Let them think they're winning, I said as I hit send. Every move they make adds to our case. Diana began gathering her equipment. I'll need full access to your firm's secure network. Bradford will have people watching your official communications. Catherine will arrange it, I said. Work from her offices. They're swept for surveillance daily. I handed her an encrypted phone. Use this. Bradford's probably monitoring my regular numbers. As Diana left, I sat back in the darkened office, staring at the cityscape through the window. In the distance, I could see the harbor, the same harbor where Bradford's team planned to stage my accident. The same place Charlotte Hayes had drowned 20 years ago. History had a way of repeating itself. But not this time. Lisa and James thought they were setting the perfect trap. They didn't realize they had just walked into mine. I unlocked the safe in the corner of my office, pulling out files I had kept for years. Records of clients, shady deals, and transactions I had never used but always kept as insurance. I hadn't become Boston's top defense attorney by trusting blindly. Now, it was time to use everything I had. I made one final call to Catherine. Have your team ready, I said. When this breaks, it's going to be nuclear. Are you sure? She asked. Once we start, there's no going back. They declared war on me, Catherine, I replied, my eyes fixed on the harbor lights. Now they'll learn what that really means. By the time I was finished, there would be nothing left of James Bradford's empire. I'll rewrite the next part, keeping the names Emily and Mark for the children, and ensuring the consistency of the story. Here's the continuation. When you die, Bradford's crimes get pinned on you. The ultimate frame job, Catherine added. They even have forged documents showing you've been laundering money for him through your client trust accounts. I stood and walked into my private office. A few moments later, I returned with a heavy black safe box, setting it carefully on the desk. Then it's time to use what I've been saving for exactly this scenario. Inside lay 16 years of insurance, photographs, recorded conversations, client confessions, judges' indiscretions, everything a top defense attorney accumulates but never uses. Until now. First, we need to contact Adrian Reynolds, I said. As a federal judge, he can ensure the warrants come from clean sources Bradford can't challenge. Catherine pulled out her phone. Adrian's expecting us. But Thomas, what he's asking in return, are you sure? My career for Bradford's destruction. That's a trade I'll make. We drove to Adrian's chambers separately, taking different routes. His secretary recognized me and buzzed us through without question. Adrian Reynolds sat behind his enormous desk, already reviewing case files. You understand what you're asking? Adrian fixed me with a stern gaze. These warrants won't just expose Bradford. They'll reveal the client's secrets you've kept, the deals you've made. Your reputation as a defense attorney will be finished. My reputation was built on lies, I replied. Bradford and Lisa made sure of that. Now we use those lies to destroy them. Adrian nodded slowly. I've known you since you were a first-year law student, Thomas. You've never been the man they think you are, the one who'd look the other way for a comfortable life. You've been playing a role, waiting for the right moment. I placed a USB drive on Adrian's desk. The moment's here. Everything I've gathered on judicial corruption in the circuit. Use it however you need to get those warrants. Diana stepped forward. I can prove electronic chain of custody for every document. When Bradford's lawyers challenge the evidence, it will hold up. Adrian began drafting orders. Give me 48 hours. But Thomas, once this starts, there's no going back. Bradford's pharmaceutical empire has tentacles everywhere. Politicians, judges, doctors. They'll all fight to protect themselves. Good. I allowed myself a cold smile. Let them show their hands. Every person who tries to protect Bradford becomes another target for prosecution. Catherine's phone buzzed. She glanced down. Mark just texted me. Bradford's taking him and Emily to look at private schools in Switzerland next week. I checked my watch. He's accelerating the timeline. Diana pulled up flight records. Bradford's already booked a private jet to Geneva. Lisa's name isn't on the manifest. Because she's expendable now, I said. Once Bradford has the kids safely out of the country, Lisa becomes a liability. There's more, Diana added. Bradford's liquidating assets through untraceable cryptocurrencies. Over $200 million moved in the past week alone. I absorbed the information, adjusting the mental chessboard. This wasn't just an escape. Bradford was orchestrating a complete disappearance. The private schools were a distraction. Once Emily and Mark were out of U.S. jurisdiction, they'd disappear into Bradford's international network. Adrian, we need those warrants now, I said firmly. Bradford's not waiting 48 hours. Adrian studied me carefully. Using them early burns our advantage of surprise. Bradford's lawyers will fight them immediately. Better than letting him escape with my children. I laid out my revised plan. Diana would provide electronic evidence linking Bradford to Charlotte's murder. Catherine's team would move on the pharmaceutical fraud simultaneously. When Bradford's lawyers scrambled to respond, that's when we'd hit them with Lisa's testimony about his operation. A three-pronged attack. Adrian leaned back in his chair. You're gambling everything on Lisa cooperating. She'll cooperate. My expression hardened. Because if she doesn't, I'll make sure she faces charges as an accessory to every crime Bradford's committed in the last 20 years. Catherine raised an eyebrow. That's ruthless, even for you. They plan to murder me and steal my children, I said, my voice cold. They don't understand ruthless yet. Diana's laptop chimed. Bradford's making a move. Large wire transfers to accounts in Dubai and Singapore. He's getting ready to run. I checked my phone. A message from Emily. Dad, weird question. Did you really embezzle money from your clients? James says the FBI has proof, And that's why you've been working late. Mom's crying. They're starting the smear campaign, I said. Perfect. Let them think I'm distracted defending myself. I turned to Diana. Leak some of those forged documents Bradford created. Make him think his plan is working. Adrian finished signing the preliminary orders. You're officially under investigation as of now. I'm sorry, Thomas, but we need Bradford to believe he's winning. I straightened my tie, every movement precise. Don't be sorry. Bradford thinks he's destroying me. I've spent 16 years preparing to destroy him. He just doesn't know it yet. 3 days later, I filed for divorce. Quietly, on a Tuesday morning. The timing was deliberate. Lisa had just finished lunch with her society friends, undoubtedly spreading rumors about my supposed ethical violations. Her attorney received the papers at the country club, ensuring maximum public exposure. Minutes later, my phone rang. How dare you serve me here? Lisa hissed. In front of everyone? We need to talk, I said calmly. My office. 1 hour. Come alone. I'm calling James's lawyers. No, you're not. If you do, the next document served will be federal indictments naming you as a co-conspirator in 2 decades of fraud and murder. 1 hour, Lisa. I ended the call and turned to Catherine, who sat quietly in the corner of my office. She'll come, I said. Her survival instincts too strong. Catherine nodded. Diana's monitoring all her communications. If she contacts Bradford, she won't. Lisa's spent 20 years manipulating people. She'll try to handle this herself first. No, I cut in, my voice colder than ice. You turn them against me, Lisa. Every whispered lie, every seed of doubt. You poisoned them against their own father. You let them believe I was a criminal. You chose Bradford over their happiness. Lisa flinched, tears welling in her eyes. I loved you, Thomas, in the beginning. No, I stood, letting the fury I had been holding back fill the room. You never loved me. I was a cover, a respectable face to raise Bradford's children. Everything about our marriage was a lie. Not everything, she whispered, fresh tears spilling. The children, they love you. Emily doesn't, I replied, my voice like stone. You made sure of that. Does it make you proud, Lisa? Turning our daughter against me with promises of cars and trips? She wiped her tears. I can fix it. I can tell Emily the truth. You'll do exactly what the immunity agreement requires, I interrupted. Nothing more. Nothing less. The children are no longer your concern. Lisa stood shakily. What do I tell James? Nothing, I said flatly. You go home. You act normal. When he contacts you, tell him I'm distracted by the FBI investigation. If you warn him, if you deviate from this script by even one word, I let the threat hang in the air. He'll kill me if he finds out, she whispered. Then pray our case is airtight. I opened the office door. Catherine stood waiting. She'll arrange protection for you, I added. But Lisa, if you betray us, prison will be the least of your worries. Lisa nodded, her eyes hollow, and left without another word. Catherine shut the door behind her and crossed her arms. That was brutal. She helped plan my murder, I replied simply. She should be grateful brutality is all she faced. James Bradford's retaliation came swiftly. At 6 a.m., FBI agents stormed my law offices, waving warrants tied to anonymous tips about evidence tampering. By noon, several of my largest clients had received letters detailing supposed ethical violations spanning years. These are better forgeries than I expected, I said, skimming the fabricated documents Diana intercepted. I sat in Catherine's office, watching the raid unfold through the security feed. Bradford's getting sloppy, though, Catherine noted, her eyes on the screen. The metadata shows these were created last week. I sipped my coffee. Good. Everything they're seizing was planted deliberately. The real records are safe, and have been for years. Diana's voice crackled over the secure line. Bradford's people just breached your home office. They're downloading files from your private server. Right on schedule. How long until they crack the encryption? I asked. 6 hours at least, Diana replied, her fingers flying across the keyboard. When they do, they'll find exactly what you wanted them to. My phone buzzed. Emily's name flashed across the screen. I put the call on speaker. Dad? There are FBI agents at the house. Mom's crying. What's going on? Emily, I need you to stay calm, I said, keeping my voice steady. These are just allegations. Everything will be cleared up soon. James says they have proof you've been stealing from clients. Her voice hardened. He showed me the documents. How could you? I exhaled slowly. Did he? And what else has James been telling you? That you're dangerous. That you might try to stop us from leaving with him. He says he's protecting us, like he protected Charlotte Hayes. My grip tightened around the phone. Ask him about Charlotte Hayes, Emily. Ask him about the Stanford student who died 20 years ago. Ask him why the case went cold after the evidence disappeared. You're lying. James says you'll try to turn us against him. No, Emily. My voice sharpened. That's what your mother and James have been doing, turning you against me with promises and lies. But the truth is coming out. All of it. The line went dead. Catherine met my gaze. How long until Bradford's team finds the hidden files? 3 hours, Diana said through the line. Good. That gives us time to position everyone. I sent a message through a secure app. Adrian's team is ready with the real warrants. The moment Bradford's team thinks they've destroyed me, we turn it on them. A commotion outside Catherine's office drew my attention. Through the glass, I saw Mark pushing past security, his phone clutched tightly in his hand. Dad! Mark burst in, out of breath. I got it. I got everything. I gestured for him to sit, but my focus sharpened. Show me. Mark pulled up a video on his phone. The footage played, showing James Bradford standing in our kitchen, speaking quietly to Lisa. Mark pulled up a video on his phone. The footage played, showing James Bradford standing in our kitchen, speaking quietly to Lisa. Once Thomas is gone, we'll move the kids somewhere safe, Bradford was saying. The evidence we planted will convince everyone he died covering up his crimes. The grieving widow and children get sympathy, not suspicion. Mark swiped to the next video. Bradford sat at his office desk, speaking to someone on speakerphone. Make it look like an accident during the Chen depositions, Bradford ordered. Once Morrison's dead, we use his accounts to hide the drug trial data. His reputation takes the fall. We get the kids, and everyone wins. Catherine leaned forward, eyes narrowed. When did you record these? Mark's chin lifted proudly. After I found those messages about them wanting Dad dead. James likes to brag when he thinks no one's listening. I have hours of it. I studied Mark carefully. Not my biological son, but my son in every way that mattered. You understand how dangerous this was? Mark met my gaze, unwavering. I understand what they were planning to do to you. I chose justice over blood. Diana's alert chimed on Catherine's laptop. Bradford's team cracked the first layer of encrypted files. They think they found evidence of Thomas laundering money through offshore accounts. Let them celebrate, I said coldly. I placed a hand on Mark's shoulder, feeling the steady thrum of tension in him. I need you to go home. Act normal. Let Emily believe whatever Bradford's telling her, for now. Trust me, Mark, the truth will come out soon enough. But first, we need Bradford to think he's winning. Mark's jaw tightened, but he nodded. I get it. After Mark left, Catherine crossed her arms and leaned against the desk. Using your own son as a spy. That's cold. No colder than Bradford using him as a pawn, I replied without missing a beat. I checked my watch. How long until the second layer of files decrypts? Diana's voice crackled over the secure line. 2 hours. That's when they'll find the fake evidence linking you to Charlotte's death. Perfect. I began typing out instructions to Adrian. Bradford thinks he's orchestrating my downfall. He doesn't realize every move he makes pulls the noose tighter around his own neck. Diana's voice came through again, sharper this time. Thomas, Emily just booked a flight to Paris. One way. Leaving tomorrow. I allowed myself a small smile. No, she didn't. Bradford's people tried to book it using her details. The airline will mysteriously cancel it within the hour. You knew he'd try this? Catherine asked, impressed. I know how predators think, Catherine. Bradford's getting desperate. The harder he pushes, the more mistakes he'll make. As if on cue, my office phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID, James Bradford's private number. Right on time, I muttered. I put the call on speaker. Morrison, Bradford's voice oozed with false sympathy. I just heard about the FBI raid. Terrible business. But I might be able to help, if you're willing to be reasonable about the children's travel plans. Blackmail, James? I expected better from you. Think of it as negotiation. You sign over custody, drop this ridiculous investigation into my business dealings, and perhaps some of that damaging evidence disappears. My tone turned arctic. Like the evidence about Charlotte Hayes disappeared? A pause. Then, careful, Morrison. False accusations can be dangerous. Nothing false about it, James. Would you like to know what else isn't false? The videos Mark recorded of you planning my murder. Silence stretched for 3 long beats. You're bluffing. Am I? Check your secure server access logs. Someone's been inside your system for months, finding all sorts of interesting conversations, drug trials, offshore accounts, and convenient accidents. If you had proof, you'd have used it already. Oh, I am using it. Right now, in fact. I let the smile edge into my voice. While you're busy trying to destroy me, you might want to pay attention to what's happening to your own organization. Bradford's composure slipped. What are you talking about? Check your accounts, James. Especially the ones you think are untraceable. The line went dead. Seconds later, Diana's voice returned. He's logging into his hidden accounts now. He's trying to access the Cayman Islands transfers. His entire network is locked down for suspicious activity. Catherine smirked. How long until he realizes it's not a glitch? Long enough. I straightened my tie. Bradford thought he could use my family to destroy me. Time to show him what real destruction looks like. My phone buzzed. A message from Emily. Dad, something's wrong with the Paris tickets. James is acting weird. What's really going on? Asterisk, asterisk. Catherine glanced at the text. Now she starts asking questions. Now she sees the cracks, I replied. I began typing a response. The truth will do what our warnings couldn't. Show her exactly who James Bradford really is. Diana's voice turned urgent. Thomas, Bradford just called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. He's trying to liquidate assets before the real warrants hit. I nodded. Perfect. Let him gather all his co-conspirators in one place. Make serving indictments so much more efficient. Catherine studied me. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Enjoying? No. My eyes hardened. But when someone tries to steal your children and take your life, you don't just defeat them. You make sure they never have the power to hurt anyone else again. The pieces were in place. Bradford's counterattack had played directly into my hands. Now, it was time for the final phase, the complete dismantling of everything he had built. The annual pharmaceutical industry gala buzzed with Boston's elite, the Fairmont Copley Plaza glowing under the shimmer of crystal chandeliers. Silk gowns and tailored Italian suits crowded the ballroom as waiters weaved through the crowd with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. James Bradford held court at his usual table, surrounded by sycophants and power players, his confidence radiating across the room. Bradford's table is positioned exactly as requested, Diana's voice reported through the earpiece. She monitored from a surveillance van parked nearby, watching through the security feeds. All cameras and displays are under our control. Catherine's voice chimed in. My people are in position. 12 detectives scattered across the crowd, all dressed to blend in. I adjusted my cufflinks and scanned the ballroom from the mezzanine. Adrian? I asked. The judge's calm voice answered, warrants are signed and sealed. The moment we move, every account Bradford controls freezes. My eyes followed Lisa as she entered with Emily and Mark. Emily wore a sleek new dress, another gift from Bradford. Mark's expression remained carefully neutral, but I could tell he was aware of the role he was playing. Mark's wearing the recording device, Catherine confirmed. I kept my gaze fixed on Bradford, watching as he laughed too easily, his posture stiff with the weight of hidden panic. He didn't know tonight was the endgame. Let him enjoy the evening, I said, taking a sip of my champagne. It's his last. Thomas, the signals are crystal clear, Diana confirmed through the earpiece. Every word Bradford says is captured with perfect chain of custody. I descended the grand staircase, noting how conversations hushed slightly as I passed. Bradford's smear campaign had done its work. Boston's social elite now viewed me as damaged goods. A once-respected attorney facing a criminal investigation. Perfect. Bradford's smirk widened as I approached his table. Morrison, brave of you to show your face here. Or desperate. Hello, James. I let my voice carry just enough to draw attention from nearby tables. Enjoying your moment? Come now, Thomas. There's no need for hostility, Bradford said, gesturing expansively. Though I hear the FBI is quite interested in your client accounts. Terrible business, that? Interesting you should mention business, I replied, stepping closer, forcing him to look up at me. I've been reviewing some old cases. Charlotte Hayes, for instance. The name hit like a bullet. Bradford's smile flickered, but only for a moment. Ancient history. Tragic accident. Nothing accidental about it, I said, loud enough for those nearby to hear. Just like there's nothing accidental about your plans for my boating mishap during the Chun depositions. Bradford recovered quickly. Causing a scene won't help your reputation, Morrison. I'm not here to cause a scene, I replied. I'm here to watch you fall. At that moment, Adrian Reynolds rose from his table and clinked his glass for attention. His deep, steady voice filled the ballroom. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. As many of you know, I've served on the federal bench for 20 years. In that time, I've presided over numerous cases of corporate fraud, but none quite like what we've uncovered at Bradford Pharmaceuticals. I glanced at Bradford. His face darkened, but he kept his composure. What is this? He hissed, eyes narrowing. Across the ballroom, the display screens flickered to life. Lisa's face appeared first, her recorded testimony clear and undeniable. James Bradford ordered Charlotte Hayes' murder when she threatened to expose illegal drug trials. He's been falsifying pharmaceutical test results for 20 years, leading to countless deaths. More screens activated, showing financial records, emails, and surveillance footage. Diana's meticulous work laid bare Bradford's entire empire, piece by piece. FBI. Nobody move, Catherine's voice boomed as her team shed their evening wear, badges flashing into view. Bradford lunged for his phone. Nothing happened. Problems? I asked quietly. Those offshore accounts seem unresponsive, almost like someone froze them across multiple jurisdictions. You can't prove anything, he snapped, but his eyes flicked around the room frantically. These are obvious forgeries. The evidence is quite real, Adrian said, his tone steady and calm, as are the federal indictments being served at every board member's table right now. Diana's voice filled the ballroom. Packet 1. Charlotte Hayes murder. Timeline reconstructed from Bradford's encrypted servers. From across the room, Emily watched, frozen in place as her biological father's facade crumbled. Mark moved to her side, whispering something in her ear. Bradford's face twisted. His desperation surfaced as he grabbed Emily's arm. Tell them, Emily. Tell them who your real father is. Take your hand off my daughter. My voice cut through the ballroom, colder than steel. Bradford's laugh was harsh, bitter. Your daughter? They're my blood. My children. You were just a convenient. His words disappeared in a grunt as Mark's elbow slammed into his ribs. Emily wrenched free, stepping back, horror flickering across her face. DNA doesn't make a father, Mark said coldly. Actions do. Catherine's team converged, weapons drawn. James Bradford, you're under arrest for the murder of Charlotte Hayes, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud. The list went on as cuffs snapped around his wrists. I watched without emotion as Bradford's associates faded into the crowd, abandoning him to face the fallout alone. Emily hesitated before stepping toward me, tears streaking her makeup. Dad, I'm so sorry. For everything I said. Later, I said quietly, placing a hand on her shoulder. Right now, we need to finish this. Lisa stood apart, silently watching her world collapse. Our eyes met across the room. She had played her part, but there would be no immunity from the consequences she had helped set in motion. Adrian approached with 2 federal marshals. We'll need statements from everyone. Catherine has arranged secure transport. I nodded. Diana, send everything to the Justice Department server. Every piece of evidence. Nothing disappears this time. Already done, Diana replied. 20 years of waiting, and my sister finally gets justice. Bradford struggled as he was led past me, his voice low and venomous. This isn't over, Morrison. I still have resources. No, you don't. I smiled, cold and calculated. Check your accounts, James. The ones in Singapore, Dubai, Switzerland. It's amazing how fast money vanishes when federal judges sign the right papers. You can't. I just did. I leaned in, lowering my voice to a whisper. You tried to steal my children, planned to murder me, and used my wife to set me up. Did you really think I'd let you keep a single penny to fight with? His face twisted in rage. Blood calls to blood, Thomas. They're my children. No, I met his stare, unblinking. They stopped being yours the moment you planned to use them as props in my murder. But don't worry. You'll have plenty of time to think about family in prison. Catherine's team led Bradford away as reporters swarmed the ballroom. I glanced at Nathan and Emily, who huddled together, both looking lost. Get them home, I instructed Nathan quietly. Use the secure car Diana arranged. I'll handle the rest. Emily touched my arm. Dad, wait. I need to tell you. Tomorrow, I said gently. Tonight, you need to be somewhere safe. After they left, Catherine joined me at the edge of the ballroom. That was ruthlessly efficient. He tried to destroy everything I love, I replied, watching Bradford disappear through the ballroom doors. I made sure he'll never get the chance again. The federal courthouse was alive with activity, the air thick with the sound of camera shutters and murmured speculation. Reporters crowded the steps, shoving microphones toward me as I passed, flanked by Catherine Walsh and Diana Hayes. Inside, I kept my eyes forward, but I could feel Bradford's gaze burning into me from across the room. He sat stiffly in his orange jumpsuit, shoulders squared, but there was no hiding the barely contained rage simmering beneath his forced calm. I almost smiled. This was a far cry from the smug pharmaceutical titan who had tried to have me killed and steal my children. His legal team, once a collection of Boston's sharpest defense attorneys, looked drained. The evidence was too overwhelming, and with every passing day, the walls closed in tighter. The prosecution calls Diana Hayes, the federal prosecutor announced, snapping me from my thoughts. Diana rose from her seat and walked to the stand, poised and unshaken as she faced the man responsible for her sister's murder. I began investigating James Bradford's activities the day after Charlotte died, Diana said, her voice strong. For 20 years, I tracked his transactions, shell companies, every suspicious death connected to his drug trials. I glanced at Bradford, noting the slight tightening of his jaw. He knew what was coming. And what did you discover? The prosecutor pressed. Bradford Pharmaceuticals conducted illegal trials on terminal patients in Eastern Europe. When patients died from drug complications, they falsified the death certificates. I found evidence of 37 confirmed deaths, with hundreds more suspected. Bradford's lawyer jumped to his feet. Objection, speculation. Overruled, the judge replied, not even looking up from his notes. The witness is a certified digital forensics expert presenting documented evidence. Diana continued without missing a beat. Bradford used a network of offshore accounts to launder profits from these illegal trials. The same financial network he used to pay for Charlotte's murder when she threatened to expose him. The room fell silent as screens lit up around the courtroom, displaying the damning chain of emails, bank transfers, and surveillance footage. Bradford's carefully crafted facade crumbled with every new piece of evidence. During recess, Catherine found me in the hallway, leaning against the marble wall with my arms crossed. Lisa's testimony is next, she said quietly. Are you sure about this? I didn't hesitate. She made her choice. Let her face the consequences. A few minutes later, Lisa walked into the courtroom. She looked hollow, her usual designer clothes traded for a simple black suit. Her eyes never met mine as she took the stand. Mrs. Morrison, the prosecutor began, please tell the court about your relationship with the defendant. Her lips trembled, but the words spilled out. Her relationship with Bradford in college, the years of secret contact, the plot to frame me and have me killed. He said it would be clean, she whispered, her voice cracking. An accident during the Chen depositions. The children would have their real father. And you agreed to this plan? Lisa's gaze dropped to her lap. Yes. I helped him arrange everything, the offshore accounts, the fake evidence against Thomas, the plans to take the children overseas. From the corner of my eye, I saw Bradford tense. You treacherous! Bradford shot to his feet, his voice venomous. Remove the defendant, the judge ordered as marshals restrained him, dragging him back into his seat. I watched Lisa for a moment longer. There was no satisfaction in seeing her like this, only a cold, empty finality. The prosecution continued, hammering Bradford's empire with relentless precision. Mark's recordings played for the jury, his steady voice capturing Bradford's murderous intentions and fraudulent dealings. I felt Emily's eyes on me from the gallery. Her hands trembled as she listened to the man she once thought was her real father casually plan my death. One by one, expert witnesses dismantled every piece of Bradford's operation. Employees came forward, testifying about falsified trials. Forensic accountants traced millions through offshore networks. Each word added another nail to the coffin of James Bradford's pharmaceutical empire. Bradford's defense team tried to discredit Diana and me, but every attack was countered with irrefutable evidence. Catherine's team had been meticulous, ensuring no loose ends. After 3 weeks of testimony, the jury didn't need long. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Charlotte Hayes, we find the defendant guilty. The room was still as the rest of the verdicts rolled in. Guilty on conspiracy, fraud, money laundering, racketeering. Bradford's empire hadn't just fallen. It had been obliterated. The judge's voice echoed across the silent courtroom. James Bradford, you have been convicted of heinous crimes spanning decades. This court sentences you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. As marshals led him away, Bradford's eyes locked onto mine. This isn't justice, he snarled. It's revenge. You destroyed everything I built. I held his gaze, letting him see exactly how little his words affected me. No, James, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. You destroyed yourself. I just exposed what you really are. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed as the media swarmed. The pharmaceutical giant that had once stood untouchable now lay in ruins. Millions in assets were seized, board members across continents faced arrest, and the victims of Bradford's crimes began to see justice. I pushed through the crowd, scanning the faces ahead. Mark and Emily waited near the car, both standing quietly as the weight of the day settled over them. As I approached, Mark stepped forward. She needs you, he said softly, nodding toward Emily. I placed a hand on his shoulder. I know. Emily met my gaze, tears still fresh in her eyes. Dad, I'm sorry. For everything. I pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly. You don't need to apologize, I whispered. We're going home. No more lies. No more shadows. Just us. Lisa waited by my car after the sentencing, her eyes hollow, her shoulders slumped. What happens now? She asked, voice trembling. You kept your immunity deal, I replied coldly. Take it and disappear. The children don't need your poison in their lives. They're still my children. No, my tone could have frozen fire. You lost any right to call them that when you helped plot their father's murder. The custody agreement is final. Leave Boston, Lisa. Don't make me show you how much evidence I held back. Her face crumpled as the weight of those words sank in. She fled to the waiting taxi, finally understanding the full magnitude of her choices. Catherine joined me, watching Lisa's departure from the courthouse steps. That's the last loose end tied up, she said. Bradford's auxiliary companies are being seized. Diana's tracking down his last hidden accounts. It's over. Almost, I replied, checking my phone. A message from Emily flashed on the screen. Dad, can we talk? Really talk. Asterisk asterisk. Now it's over, I said quietly, tucking my phone away. Emily was waiting for me in my study when I got home. The room felt heavier than usual, as if the air itself carried the weight of all that had happened. She'd spent weeks processing the revelations about her biological father, trying to reconcile the charming man who had promised her the world with the murderer exposed in court. I'm so sorry, she whispered as I entered, tears brimming in her eyes. For the horrible things I said to you. For choosing him over you. I stepped forward, but let her speak. I believed them, she said, her voice cracking. I was so excited about Paris, the car, having my real father. I thought he was everything I wanted, but I couldn't see what was right in front of me, that I already had a real father, one who loved me no matter what. I didn't need to say anything. I pulled her into a hug, feeling the tension that had lingered for years finally break. She wasn't just my daughter by name. She was mine in every way that mattered. Bradford had tried to use blood ties to steal my children. Instead, he had taught them a lesson he could never understand. Family wasn't about DNA. It was about love, sacrifice, and showing up when it mattered most. Mark appeared in the doorway, his expression calm but his eyes reflecting quiet relief. "They're announcing the seizure of Bradford's overseas assets," he said. "Diana says they found accounts even we didn't know about." "Good," I replied. "Every penny goes to his victims' families. Bradford won't have anything left to fight with." The evening news continued reporting the aftershocks. Bradford's entire board of directors faced indictment. Corrupt FDA officials were arrested. International pharmaceutical regulations were overhauled in response to the scandal. Charlotte Hayes's case was officially closed. Justice, after 20 years, had been served. Diana's team tracked down every last hidden resource, ensuring nothing of Bradford's empire remained intact. The man who once commanded billions now sat in federal prison with no assets, no allies, and no future. Lisa relocated to Seattle under the terms of her immunity deal. She sent one final letter to the children. Neither of them read it. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. Emily abandoned her dreams of material luxury, seeing how empty it had left her mother. Instead, she began working with support groups for young people affected by family violence, turning her pain into purpose. The news showed Bradford's final appeal being denied. His claims of a frame-up were dismissed by the appeals court. I watched the report with my children at my side, feeling no satisfaction, only certainty that justice had finally been served. Bradford had built his empire on lies, manipulation, and murder. In the end, those same tools became the weapons of his destruction. He never understood what I had known all along. My strength wasn't in the courtroom. It was in the love I had for my family. And no force, not blood, money, or power, could break that bond. 1 year after Bradford's conviction, I sat in my expanded corner office at Morrison and Walsh. The view of Boston Harbor reminded me daily of how close I had come to being another tragic accident in Bradford's long list of victims. The morning's newspaper lay on my desk. The headline was blunt: "Bradford's final appeal denied. Life sentence stands." I filed it away in the growing stack of justice served. Catherine entered without knocking. Our partnership long past the need for formality. "Diana's here with the quarterly security report," she said, smirking. "And there's something else you should see." Diana Hayes stepped in, laptop under her arm. In the year since her sister's killer had been convicted, she transformed our investigation team into Boston's premier digital forensics unit. Morrison and Walsh now specialized in exposing corporate crimes that other firms wouldn't touch. Bradford's last overseas account finally cracked, Diana reported, pulling up complex data streams. He had one final failsafe hidden in a North Korean bank. $300 million, frozen and being processed for victim restitution. I nodded. "Make sure Charlotte's foundation gets priority funding." "How's the new security system holding up?" I asked. "Perfectly," Diana replied with satisfaction. "No one gets within digital breathing distance of our files now. Everything we learned taking down Bradford became a template for protecting other families from corporate predators." Catherine settled into the chair across from me. "Speaking of families, how are the kids doing?" I smiled, gesturing to the framed photo on my desk. It was from Mark's graduation, the three of us smiling, arms around each other. "He's already talking about specializing in corporate crime prosecution," I said, pride swelling in my chest. "He wants to make sure no other family goes through what we did." "And Emily?" "She's working with abuse survivors while studying psychology. She's presenting at a victims advocacy conference next week. Bradford's case study is apparently required reading now." Diana's laptop chimed with an alert. "Lisa stayed in Seattle. No contact with the kids for 8 months." "Good." I didn't hide the finality in my tone. Some betrayals couldn't be forgiven. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Morrison, the Attorney General's office is on line 1. They want to discuss expanding the pharmaceutical industry oversight protocols you proposed. Put them through in 5 minutes, I said, turning back to Catherine. Ready to help rewrite the rules? I asked. Always, Catherine grinned. Who would have thought taking down Bradford would lead to reforming the entire system? It had to be done. I straightened my tie. Bradford wasn't an anomaly. He was a symptom of a system that valued profit over lives. We changed that. Diana smiled softly. Charlotte would be proud. Justice comes in many forms, I replied. My phone buzzed. A text from Mark. Family dinner tonight. Emily's cooking. Wouldn't miss it. I glanced at the photo one more time. They might not share my DNA, but they shared something far more valuable. They were mine. And nothing would ever change that. The strength to face adversity and emerge stronger. Diana gathered her equipment, packing up after completing the monthly security updates. Oh, and that reporter from the Times called again. They want to do a feature on the firm's transformation. Decline, I said, moving to the window. The view of Boston Harbor stretched out before me. We're not here for publicity. We're here to protect families from people like Bradford. Catherine and Diana exchanged a glance, a knowing one. They had watched me rebuild after Bradford's betrayal, watched me transform from a defense attorney who protected the wealthy into someone who brought them down. The Attorney General's office is holding, my assistant announced from the doorway. I straightened my shoulders, preparing for another battle against corporate corruption. Bradford had tried to destroy me by using my family as a weapon. Instead, I had built something stronger. A team dedicated to exposing criminals who thought they were untouchable. Put them through, I said, turning to Catherine and Diana. Ready to change the world again? Their grins matched my determination. Together, we had turned personal vengeance into systemic justice. Bradford's betrayal had cost me my old life, but given me something far greater, purpose. Later that evening, I left the office early, driving home to the family dinner Emily had promised. The house no longer felt haunted by Lisa's betrayal. It had become a sanctuary, a place where love, trust, and resilience filled every corner. Emily met me at the door, her smile warm and genuine. The angry, materialistic teenager was gone. In her place stood a young woman who understood the true value of character over possessions. Mark's attempting to cook, she said, laughing. We might need takeout as backup. I hugged her, holding on a little longer than usual. I'd come close to losing her to Bradford's manipulation, but we'd made it through. As long as we're together, I said, the food doesn't matter. Inside, Mark had law books sprawled across the kitchen counter, reading while attempting to chop vegetables. Dad, did you really argue the Chun case while setting up Bradford's takedown? Focus on your own studies, I said, but pride warmed my voice. Mark had inherited my strategic mind and sense of justice. His future wasn't dictated by DNA, but by the values we'd instilled in him. The kitchen filled with laughter and conversation as we prepared dinner together. There were no mentions of Bradford, Lisa, or the past. Those wounds had healed, leaving behind something stronger, something unbreakable. I watched my children, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. Bradford had tried to use blood ties to destroy my family. Instead, he had taught us all that family bonds came from love, trust, and shared values. My phone buzzed with one final message from Diana. Bradford's last appeal option expired. I read it, then silenced my phone. Work could wait. Right now, I had everything that mattered. A family that had chosen me as their father, not because of DNA, but because of love. Some victories weren't measured in courtroom verdicts or headlines. They were measured in moments like this. Family dinner with the children who had faced darkness and emerged stronger. Bradford had tried to steal my children, destroy my reputation, and take my life. Instead, he had given us something unshakable, proof that family wasn't about biology. It was about choice, love, and standing together. As we sat down to dinner, Emily smiled across the table. Family dinner every Sunday? She asked, passing the salad. No matter how busy we get? Count me in, Mark replied. Even during law school. I smiled, looking at my children. I wouldn't miss it for anything. Because in the end, that's what mattered. Not Bradford's crimes, not Lisa's betrayal, but the family we built from the ashes, stronger, wiser, and unshakably united. The perfect revenge wasn't destruction. It was living well. 10 years later, the Seattle Women's Correctional Facility loomed against the gray sky. Inside, Lisa Morrison sat in the visitation room, the years of prison leaving lines on her once youthful face. Her designer clothes were long gone, replaced by the plain prison-issued uniform. The immunity deal had protected her from Bradford's crimes, but not from her own. 3 years after relocating to Seattle, she violated the custody agreement, trying to contact Emily and Mark. When that failed, she attempted to access funds hidden from the investigation, Bradford's last stash of money. The financial fraud and attempted contact had earned her an 8-year sentence. Visitor for Morrison, the guard announced. Diana Hayes entered, tablet in hand. She had spent the last decade building Morrison and Walsh's digital forensics division into one of the country's most respected units. Why are you here? Lisa's voice was rough from disuse. Closing loose ends, Diana replied coolly, activating her tablet. We found your last hidden account. Bradford's empire is finally gone. Lisa's hands trembled. That money was for the children. The children want nothing from you, Diana cut in. And you knew that when you hired investigators. How did that work out? Lisa's facade cracked. I just wanted to explain, to make them understand. Understand what? Diana's voice hardened. How you helped plot their father's murder. How you poisoned them against him. Lisa's head bowed, tears streaking her face. You know what the saddest part is? Diana said, standing to leave. You had everything. A loving husband, beautiful children. You threw it away for a man who saw you as nothing but a tool. Lisa sobbed quietly as Diana left, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. Across the country, I stood in my office, reviewing new case files. Morrison and Walsh had expanded to 5 locations, exposing corporate fraud and bringing justice to families who had been victims of corruption. Singapore team just checked in, Catherine said, stepping inside. Another pharmaceutical company caught falsifying trials. Sound familiar? Follow the money, I said, pulling up the financials. How's Sarah's wedding planning going? Catherine teased. She's terrifyingly organized, I replied, laughing. Mark's perfect for her. Emily arrived, her pregnancy evident. Mom tried reaching out again, she said, holding an unopened letter. And? I asked. I burned it, Emily replied. We made our choice years ago. I smiled at her, feeling nothing but pride. Some battles were worth any price. And the family I had built? That was my greatest victory.